April 29th, 1945. American boots crush gravel on the outskirts of Munich. The war is almost over. In Berlin, Adolf Hitler is days away from suicide in his bunker. But for the men of the 45th Infantry Division, the real horror is just beginning. They are moving toward a location called Dachau. What they find there will push some soldiers to commit acts they will never speak of again. The smell hits them first. It carries for miles before the gates are even visible. A sickening stench drifts on the spring air. It is the smell of rotting human flesh. Thousands of corpses are decomposing under the German sunshine. The soldiers cover their faces, but the odor clings to their uniforms. Why were these men chosen for this mission? At first glance, they were seasoned veterans, but in reality, they were at their breaking point. The 45th Thunderbird Division has been in combat for 511 consecutive days. They landed in Sicily in July 1943. They captured Palermo and fought through the Italian peninsula. They spent 135 days trapped at Anzio. During that time, German artillery rained down day and night. The men watched their friends get blown apart in foxholes. They pushed through southern France, smashed the Siegfried Line, and crossed the Rhine. The casualty rate is nearly 75%. 3 out of every 4 men who started with this division are now dead or wounded. The survivors have seen every form of death the war can offer. But this was only the beginning. The camera would show soldiers staring blankly at the road ahead. Their eyes are hollow. Their movements are mechanical. Nothing has prepared them for what is waiting at the end of this path. Lieutenant Colonel Felix Sparks is 28 years old. He leads the 3rd Battalion of the 157th Infantry Regiment. His orders are direct. Secure the concentration camp at Dachau. At this moment, no one understands the meaning of those words. Concentration camp. In 1945, the term does not yet carry the weight of the world. It is just another objective on a map. The sound of heavy engines idling fills the air. Sparks checks his watch. He signals for the column to move forward. The men grip their rifles. They do not know they are walking into a crime scene that will change history. Events accelerated. The first sight is a train sighting. The footage reveals dozens of open coal cars. They are not filled with fuel. They are piled high with skeletal bodies. The soldiers stop. No one speaks. The only sound is the wind whistling through the train cars. There was no mistake. This was not a military target. Thus began the liberation of Dachau. 39 railway cars sit on a siding near the camp entrance. This is the moment everything changes. Sparks approaches the first car and peers inside. He immediately vomits. The interior of the boxcar is packed from floor to ceiling with naked corpses. Emaciated bodies are stacked like cordwood. Some victims still have their eyes open. They are frozen in their final moments of agony. Brain tissue lies splattered on the ground next to crushed skulls. These bodies are in various stages of decomposition. Some have been dead for days, others have been rotting for weeks. Maggots crawl through the mass of gray flesh. The smell is a physical wall. The camera records the soldiers' faces. Private First Class John Lee, a hardened infantryman, stares at the pile and begins to cry. He does not turn away. It looks as if the dead are staring back. Their empty eyes seem to ask a single question: what took you so long? Other soldiers remain frozen. A few curse under their breath. Most are struck dumb. The human brain cannot process this scale of carnage. This is the death train from Buchenwald. How did this happen? The answer is a 3-week descent into hell. The train left on April 7, 1945. It carried more than 5,000 prisoners. Under normal conditions, the journey should have lasted only a few days. Instead, the transport meandered through Saxony, into Czechoslovakia, and finally toward Bavaria. For 21 days, the cars moved without a destination. There was no food, there was no water. The prisoners were packed so tightly they could not sit down. By the time the wheel stopped at Dachau, 2,310 people were dead. Starvation killed hundreds. Dehydration killed hundreds more. Typhus swept through the cars. Many were simply trampled or suffocated in the crush. The SS guards did not stop. They did not remove the dead. When a car became too full of corpses, they forced the living to stand on top of them. They kept packing people in until the doors could barely latch. Now, multiply that single car by 39. Over 2,000 decomposing corpses fill the siding. Most are completely naked. Their skeletal limbs are twisted into impossible positions. Events accelerated. The soldiers moved toward the camp gates. There was no turning back now. April 29, 1945. Lieutenant William Walsh leads the company of the 157th Infantry toward the camp gates. He is 25 years old. For 500 consecutive days, Walsh has lived in the mud and the fire of the front lines. He believed he understood the limits of human cruelty. He was wrong. The sight of the death train destroys his remaining composure. The company marches past the line of coal cars. Suddenly, 4 German soldiers emerge from the tree line. They raise their hands. One holds a white handkerchief. They are SS. The runes on their collars and the silver skulls on their caps are unmistakable. Walsh stares at them. He looks back at the boxcars where the bodies of men, women, and children are stacked like refuse. Walsh makes a decision. He does not call for a transport. He does not call for a medic. Walsh barks an order, forcing the 4 SS prisoners into an empty boxcar. He climbs in after them. The sound of a Colt .45 caliber pistol echoes inside the wooden walls. Walsh empties his magazine. The Germans do not die instantly. They collapse onto the floor, screaming and begging for mercy in their own language. Private Albert Pruitt watches from the doorway. He says nothing. He climbs into the car, draws his weapon, and methodically fires 1 round into each man's head. This is the coup de grace. 4 surrendering soldiers executed in a tomb of their own making. But this was only the beginning. Lieutenant Colonel Felix Sparks pushes his battalion deeper into the complex. The scale of the sight defies logic. The main camp holds over 30,000 prisoners. In the camera frame, they look like walking skeletons. Men and women weigh less than 80 pounds. Their eyes are deep in their skulls. Their skin hangs from their limbs like gray fabric. Many try to stand and fail. Thousands of others lie dead in the dirt, rotting in the open air. In the barracks, the living and the dead share the same bunks. Some bodies have been there for hours, others have been there for days. No one has the strength to move them. The footage reveals the reality, a thick, suffocating stench of human waste and disease. Sparks reaches the crematorium. He finds rooms filled from floor to ceiling with naked corpses. The piles are so high they touch the rafters. The coal-fired ovens are not cold. Sparks touches them. They are still warm. Inside the grates, the soldiers find charred bones and half-consumed torsos. The SS ran out of coal before they could finish the evidence. Next to the ovens stands the gas chamber, disguised as a shower room. Outside the door, more bodies wait for the fire. The smell of burning hair hangs in the air. The American soldiers stop talking. Some vomit. Others simply stare. There was no turning back now. Context is critical for the events that follow. The men of the 45th Infantry Division arrived at the gates with a specific history. 4 months earlier, in December 1944, the SS committed a massacre at Malmedy. They machine-gunned 84 American prisoners of war in an open field after they had already surrendered. The news reached every American unit on the front lines. A new, unofficial policy emerged among the divisions. Regular Wehrmacht soldiers could surrender and receive transport to camps. The SS received no such mercy. The 45th Division carried its own dark record. In 1943, during the invasion of Sicily, their soldiers killed 73 Italian and German prisoners. This event became known as the Biscari Massacre. While the military filed court-martial papers, no significant punishments followed. The soldiers understood the unwritten rules of the conflict. Now, standing inside Dachau, surrounded by evidence of industrial-scale murder, those rules are back in effect. At the camp entrance, one officer remains. Heinrich Wicker is 23 years old. He holds the rank of SS Untersturmführer. The actual commandant, Martin Weiss, fled the scene 2 days prior. Most experienced guards escaped with him. Wicker is left in charge of 560 men. Most are sick, wounded, or recruits from disciplinary units. Many are Hungarian Waffen-SS who cannot speak German. They did not run Dachau for 12 years. They arrived only in the final days of the war. To the Americans, the distinction does not matter. The uniform is the only evidence they need. Lieutenant Walsh moves deeper into the camp. He begins a systematic roundup. This is not for the protection of the prisoners. He separates the men into two groups. The Wehrmacht soldiers go to one area, the SS go to another. Walsh identifies approximately 60 SS men. Many are visibly ill or bandaged. He marches them toward a coal yard near the back entrance of the camp. The soldiers line them up against a brick wall. Walsh calls for heavy fire. Lieutenant Daniel Drain from M Company arrives with a .30 caliber machine gun team. The SS men stand in a row. Some keep their hands behind their heads, others raise them high. The footage would show a scene of pure anticipation. They know the outcome. Some prisoners beg for their lives in German. Others stand in total silence. Private William Curtin takes his position at the machine gun. He mounts the weapon on its tripod, facing the line of men. Walsh stands a few feet away, watching the line. A moment of silence follows. Then, the shooting begins. The result was immediate. 10 seconds of thunder. Private Curtin pulls the trigger of the .30 caliber machine gun. The weapon roars inside the enclosed coal yard, the sound bouncing off the brick walls. He does not aim for the legs. He aims for center mass. The SS men have no time to react. The bullets tear through wool uniforms and flesh. Men are lifted off their feet and slammed backward against the stone. Bodies crumble into heaps. Blood sprays across the gray concrete floor. Then, silence. The burst lasts only 10 seconds before the machine gun stops. The belt is empty or the mechanism has jammed. The yard is a mess of movement. Many SS guards are still alive. They are not standing, but they are breathing. Some crawl toward the shadows. Others writhe on the ground, clutching their stomachs. The American soldiers do not wait to reload the machine gun. They move in on foot. They carry M1 carbines, Garand rifles, and Colt 45 pistols. They walk slowly among the fallen Germans. They stop at each wounded man and fire a single shot into the head, one by one. It is methodical, it is silent. Lieutenant Jack Bushyhead joins the line. As the executive officer of I Company, he leads by example. He raises his pistol and fires. The coal yard is no longer a holding area. It is a killing floor. Felix Sparks is in another part of the Dachau camp. He hears the rhythm of the shots. He stops. He knows the difference between a skirmish and a massacre. This is not combat fire. This is execution fire. It is controlled and sustained. Sparks runs. He reaches the coal yard and the sight stops him. 16 SS men lie dead or dying against the wall. The air is thick with the smell of cordite and copper. Blood pools in the low spots of the concrete. American soldiers are still standing over the wounded, looking for movement. Sparks draws his pistol. He does not point it at the enemy. He fires 2 rounds into the air. He screams for a ceasefire. The soldiers look up. Their expressions are dazed, like men waking from a trance. Sparks does not wait for a verbal response. He reaches Private Curtin and physically kicks him away from the machine gun. He bellows the order again, "Stop shooting." The men slowly lower their muzzles. Sparks counts the bodies. 16 are dead. More are bleeding out. He realizes the gravity of the moment. This is a war crime. He knows the regulations. His men know the laws of war. But there is a context to the rage. 30 minutes ago, these same soldiers walked past rail cars filled with thousands of rotting corpses. They saw a room stacked to the ceiling with naked, starved civilians. They smelled the human grease from the ovens. They stood inside the gas chambers. Sparks orders medical aid for the survivors. Lieutenant Howard Buchner, the battalion surgeon, arrives at 4 in the afternoon. He sees the 15 or 16 bodies sprawled along the wall. Some of the wounded are still twitching. Buchner is a medical officer. He has taken the Hippocratic Oath. His sole duty is to preserve life, regardless of the uniform. He walks through the blood. He looks at the dying Germans. He turns around and walks away. He offers no bandages. He administers no morphine. During his later testimony, he admitted he did not examine a single man. The execution was over, but the dying continued. April 29, 1945. The violence at the coal yard was only the beginning. At Tower B, 17 more SS men are gunned down. Reports from the scene do not match. Some soldiers claim the Germans tried to run. Others say they were ready to surrender. Signal Corps photographers documented the bodies. The images show a different reality. The men were shot while their hands were raised. Nearby, 7 more Germans are killed near a guard tower. Military investigators would later reach a blunt conclusion. These were unwarranted executions. At first glance, the camp was liberated. But in reality, a new phase of violence began. Dachau is open, but the prisoners do not leave. They want blood. American soldiers do not stop them. Some Americans actively help. SS guards are hunted through every block of the camp. Many guards try to hide by wearing stolen prisoner uniforms. It does not work. The inmates have memorized the faces of their tormentors over years of abuse. When an SS man is spotted, the crowd swarms. The footage shows 2 prisoners grab a guard. They have a shovel. American soldiers stand a few feet away watching the scene. They do not move to intervene. The shovel rises, it falls, it rises again. The sound of metal hitting bone is constant. The guard's skull collapses. Blood and brain matter spray onto the dirt. The Americans turn their heads. They let the beating continue until the guard is dead. Events accelerated. Another inmate finds a trooper hiding in the shadows. The prisoner begins stomping on the man's face. He does not stop. An American soldier watches the boots hit the flesh over and over. He speaks to the prisoner. He says, "You have a lot of hate in your heart." The prisoner nods. He continues to stomp. By the time he finishes, the guard's face is unrecognizable. The soldier simply walks away. Why did the Americans allow this? They had orders to maintain discipline, but the sights inside the barracks had destroyed their mercy. 3 young Jewish men find an American chaplain. They tell him a story. They found a sadistic guard hiding in a barn outside the wire. He was dressed in peasant clothes to blend in. They beat him to death with their bare hands and farm tools. The chaplain listens. He nods. He makes a note in his log, but he files no charges. Visuals from the camp show a different kind of desecration. Rabbi Eli Bonin, a military chaplain, witnesses a scene he will never forget. An emaciated prisoner shuffles toward a dead SS guard. The inmate is so weak he can barely stand. He unzips his pants. He urinates on the dead man's face. He does it slowly. He does it deliberately. The rabbi watches in silence. He does not stop the man. There was no mistake about the brutality. Rabbi Max Eichhorn later gave testimony about the prisoner's revenge. He described guards being beaten until their bodies were ripped open. Their internal organs were visible in the mud. How many died? No one has an exact number. The official Army report by Lieutenant Colonel Walter Fellens lists 17 killed by Americans. Colonel Felix Sparks gives a higher estimate. He believes 30 to 50 men were killed by both soldiers and prisoners. The bodies were left where they fell. Thus ended the day at Dachau. 25 to 50 men. That is how many guards the liberated prisoners killed with their own hands. The total death toll reached 60 to 90 people. It was a massacre. It was a war crime. But the facts reveal a darker detail. Why did the victims die for crimes they didn't personally commit? The answer lies in the timing. Most of the SS men killed at Dachau that day were not the veterans of the camp. They were not the men who ran the facility for 12 years. They had not operated the gas chambers or conducted the medical experiments. They were not the ones who had spent a decade beating prisoners to death. Those men were gone. The escape happened days earlier. Commandant Martin Weiss fled the scene. The senior SS officers disappeared into the night. The experienced guards who knew every inch of the camp were long gone. The men who died in the coal yard were mostly Waffen SS soldiers. They had just arrived from the Eastern Front. They had spent months fighting the Soviet Red Army in brutal conditions. These men were sick and wounded. They were exhausted from constant combat. For them, a transfer to Dachau seemed like a lucky break. They expected a quiet surrender to the Americans. They thought they were moving toward safety. Instead, they walked into a trap. They were executed for the atrocities of others because their uniforms branded them as guilty. History records the scale. Between 1933 and 1945, over 188,000 prisoners passed through the gates of Dachau. At least 41,000 people died inside. The causes of death were consistent: starvation, disease, torture, execution, medical experiments. The prisoners were worked until their bodies failed. The situation worsened at the end. Between January and April 1945, over 11,000 people died in the main camp alone. By the time the Americans arrived, the death rate reached 200 people every single day. Dachau was the original blueprint. It opened just 5 weeks after Hitler took power in 1933. It was the first Nazi concentration camp. It served as the model for the entire system. The SS used Dachau as a training ground. They perfected techniques of torture and systems of control here. They refined the methods of dehumanization. These systems were then exported to Auschwitz, Buchenwald, and Bergen-Belsen. Dachau was also the testing site for human guinea pigs. Dr. Franz Blaha, a Czech physician imprisoned at the camp, later provided testimony at Nuremberg. He described what he saw. The footage and records show the details. Nazi doctors tested the effects of freezing on live inmates. They submerged prisoners in ice-cold water for hours. They watched and took notes until the victims died. Out of 300 inmates forced into these hypothermia experiments, nearly 100 died in the water. The experiments were systematic and cold. There was no mercy. Thus, the camp became a factory of death. Medical experiments began with deliberate infection. Doctors injected prisoners with malaria or locked them inside glass cages filled with thousands of mosquitoes. They watched as the insects fed. The goal was to track the progression of heart failure. Other inmates were forced to drink nothing but seawater. This was a test of survival limits. They also conducted high-altitude trials. Technicians forced subjects into pressure chambers. They increased the pressure until the lungs of the victims physically exploded. 80 prisoners died directly from these tests. 120 others were left permanently maimed. Dr. Blaha later testified about the routine. He saw prisoners shot in the neck and carried on stretchers to the crematorium. He performed the examinations himself. The executions were methodical. Women were killed by hanging, shooting, or lethal injection. Some of these women were pregnant at the time of their death. The camera would show rows of bodies with identical wounds. What about the night and fog prisoners? They were people kept in total isolation from the world. Just before the camp was liberated, the guards received an order. Every one of them was executed. Blaha checked the corpses. Every single person had been shot in the base of the skull. Conditions inside the barracks were a biohazard. Rooms were so crowded that cleaning was impossible. Prisoners went months without a bath. Latrines were overflowing and unusable. Medicine for the sick did not exist, but this was a choice. After liberation, soldiers discovered a warehouse. The SS hospital was filled with crates of medicine. It was more than enough to save thousands. Instead, it was kept behind locked doors. New arrivals faced immediate degradation. Guards forced them to stand naked in a line for 12 hours. It did not matter if the temperature was freezing or if the sun was scorching. They waited from morning until night. 7,000 victims. Between 1942 and 1945, that is how many prisoners were used for medical tests. 200 German doctors staffed the camps. They performed surgeries without anesthesia. They worked with the full approval of the SS administration. The evidence was everywhere. American soldiers walked through the gates of Dachau and saw 12 years of systematic murder. Then, they saw the SS guards standing in clean uniforms. Was a violent reaction inevitable? At first glance, it was a liberation. But, in reality, it was a crime scene. On May 2, 1945, the tension broke. 3 days after the camp was officially taken, the soldiers snapped. The era of the camp guards ended there. 41-year-old Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Whitaker receives the assignment. He is a lawyer serving in the 7th Army's Assistant Inspector General's office. On May 3, 1945, Whitaker arrives at the Dachau concentration camp. He begins a forensic examination of the coal yard. He walks the ground, takes photographs, and measures bullet trajectories. He bends down to collect shell casings from the dirt. The evidence is physical and concrete. Whitaker finds .45 caliber shells fired from pistols. He finds heavy scarring from machine gun fire. The bullet holes in the brick wall tell a specific story. The SS men were standing still against the wall when the metal hit them. They were not rushing forward or attempting to escape. They were lined up. Whitaker interviews nearly 24 soldiers under oath. He speaks to everyone from high-ranking generals to low-level privates. Anyone who saw the killings is questioned. A picture of chaos and rage emerges. These were unofficial murders. But the stories do not match. Why the discrepancies? At first glance, conflicting memories, but in reality, a calculated cover-up. Some soldiers are gripped by guilt, others are protecting their friends. Private Curtin testifies that Lieutenant Walsh gave the direct order to fire. Walsh denies this. He claims he only authorized lethal force if the Germans charged the Americans. Other soldiers testify that no formal order was even necessary. The word simply spread through the ranks. The plan was to execute every SS guard on sight. Lieutenant Bushyhead confirms this in his testimony. Private William Competile agrees. The general feeling among the troops was clear. No prisoners would be taken today. The testimonies are damning, but the footage and reports reveal a deeper truth. These men are not hiding their actions. There is no shame in their voices. Some are defiant. They had walked through the death camp. They saw the piles of bodies in the gas chambers. In that moment, the Geneva Convention was just paper. Military justice was an abstract concept from a distant world. They felt they were delivering the only justice that mattered. On June 8, 1945, Whitaker completes the file. The report is titled, Investigation of Alleged Mistreatment of German Guards at Dachau. The conclusions are blunt. At the camp entrance, Lieutenant William Walsh shot 4 German soldiers inside a boxcar. The men had already surrendered. Private Pruitt then moved in and executed the wounded. After entering the main complex, Walsh and Lieutenant Bushyhead segregated the prisoners. They separated the Wehrmacht soldiers from the SS. The SS men were marched to the coal yard. They were lined up against a wall and shot by American troops. 17 died instantly. Others lay wounded on the ground. Near a guard tower, 7 more Germans were killed. Whitaker determines this was an entirely unwarranted execution. The investigation was over. The facts were on the table.